Is like,
Oh,
Dog is getting bored.
I don't want to hear that.
You're listening to In the Weeds Prohibition Talk Radio on WGDR 91.1 and WGDH 91.7. Hey guys, welcome to In the Weeds this week. I'm your co-host, Brandon Barberio, and with me as always, Mr. Man, Joseph Smith.
What's up, tokers and tokettes? We are very excited to bring you an awesome show today. We've been really looking forward to this show for a few weeks now. We try to keep it under a little bit of wraps. We really have a bunch of true legends in the cannabis industry and Cryo. So if you guys haven't been watching the show lately and you know us personally, we've been really promoting this Cryo technology for a while. It's really going to be awesome today because we're going to have a bunch of people join us, like the legend, the guru, Ed Rosenthal, our local New England, and really his own legend in his own right. We have Danko, and we have Tracee, Mcafee, and Greg Baughman on from Cryo, guys. So the biggest thing that we want to talk about right now, we're going to get right into it. It's Cryo, right? We've been promoting the show. We've seen a bunch of people talk about, is it a gimmick? Is it real? How does it work? So we're going to get to that stuff for all you guys today, because I'm sure there's a lot of people questioning this technology, but all I can say, I've tried it. We have a friend that does it here in Vermont. It's really, truly amazing. I think by the end of the show, guys, everybody else is going to want to try this, and you should, because it's really a different and unique smoking experience that you can't get off cured cannabis. So we're going to go right into that. But first of all, how the heck did we get to this point of technology, right? So, Tracee, Greg, for us, introduce yourselves to everybody, and really, how the heck did you get turned on to this idea?
Well, yeah, I'm Greg Baughman. This is my partner, Tracee Mcafee, Cryo. I think it's best, honestly, to pass it over to Ed, because Ed was our inspiration for this technology. Now, Ed, I think you should tell them your story, the way that what you wrote about. I think it's best heard by you.
Yeah, it was in his previous edition of your book.
Is that Derek? Hey, Ed, how you doing today?
Good, really good.
Welcome to the show again.
Hi, Ed.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So, I'm sort of an experimental person, and so one day I decided to see what would happen if I put a bud in the freezer. So I took a bud, put it on a plate, and put it in the freezer. And you know that frost-free freezers are frost-free because when you close a door, there's a compressor and creating a vacuum. And so there's, rather than a compressor or pump, creating a vacuum in the freezer. So it acts as a freeze dryer. And, when you get freezer burn on your meat in a freezer, what it's actually doing is drying that meat. It's drawing all the water out of it, so it's a dried piece, and that's why it feels the way it does. So that's exactly what I did, is put that bud in the freezer, and then a week later I took it out, and it was totally dry, and it had dried in a different way. It retained its color. It retained it retained a bit of pliability, and also it didn't shrink. And it was very fragrant because when you freeze something, the terpenes stay there. They don't evaporate the way they do in a thermal system, where they're heated and evaporate. And so I wrote about it in a few paragraphs in Grower's Handbook. and then Tracee and Greg took me up on it. Not me, but
We found your secret egg.
Yeah.
We found your secret egg that you hid.
It was like this wizard when he's like, "Congratulations!
Yes.
What took somebody so long?" Because it was like 10 years ago, wasn't it, or something that you wrote about that? And it was like just like this magic wizard moment. I will never forget it as long as I live, and we've been together ever since.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a truly unique. I mean, a lot of people talk about freezing it, and like you guys had said, there's one thing we have to understand is it's not quite our home freezer, right? It's a completely different kind of idea behind it, correct?
Well,
it's the same idea. It's just more extreme.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's right.
The home freezer doesn't get as cold, and it doesn't have as strong a vacuum.
Right.
But it's basically the same technique.
So now I was going to say, we heard the term winterize a lot, right, in the industry lately. A lot of people are talking about winterizing products and stuff. Is this the same kind of idea behind that, or is it completely different?
No, I don't believe that. Winterizing is something that you do post in a distillation process for removing fats and lipids out of material. I think when you're hearing winterize, that's what they're referring that to.
Yeah, I mean, even this process, you can't really even call it freeze drying because cryo cure is different from even the basic freeze drying that people think of when they think of, like astronaut food or whatever it might be.
Right. Those are usually achieved, like when you're freeze drying foods, they're under a much, much stronger vacuum because they have such a heavier water content than cannabis. So there's a much stronger vacuum under those food freeze drying settings, and they achieve much higher temperatures as well. Mm-hmm. So for instance, myrcene, I believe, boils off at 68.5 degrees Fahrenheit. So, when you start getting up into the upper 70s, when you're trying to freeze dry cannabis, you're going to start pulling all of the terpenes off of it. Mm-hmm. And that's where, there's a couple tricks and phases steps that we've put into our recipe that also removes the chlorophyll taste. And I think that's very important because when you freeze dry cannabis, you're still going to get a green flavor to it that you're going to have to post cure to get it off. Our flower right out of the machine will have none of that green taste that is associated with early picked or trying to force market cannabis. Mm-hmm. That's not what the process is about. We're not trying to cut any corners. We're just
on a commercial scale and with our recipe.
Yep.
Right. Now, and it has tremendous applications for hash makers as well, extract artists and people who make concentrates because, when you're able to do that in 24 hours and then, the product itself is different, the dry sift product, the rosin.
Well, you said it,
but I'll let those guys talk about it.
Right.
You make a great point, Dan. Like the water. I mean, water content's something we're always worried about, right? I mean, it's the biggest issue we have to face when we're pressing products, right? It's the biggest issue we have to face when we're processing a product through whatever machine we're processing them through. It's the moisture content. Now, you make a great point, and I have a question too because we talk about cannabinoids a lot, right? And Dan and Ed, this is great questions for both of you guys because as we talk about the curing process, a lot of people don't realize how many cannabinoids can be lost just through the drying stage, right? And with this, it's kind of like the fresh press idea where we're really maximizing cannabinoids, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're lowering the risk of mold, which is something that, anytime moisture is contained, and, I learned this from Ed as well, so I'll let him talk about that. But, the traditional drying and curing process is rife with powdery mildew and mold having an effect, right, Ed?
Yes. Yep. Well, what happens is, as let's say you have it in a closed container, or jar, or a can, or something like that, and there's moisture, and the moisture starts. The plant has moisture, and as the moisture evaporates, the relative humidity in the container goes way up. And as that goes up, that becomes a fertile ground for bacteria and molds.
And we see it in New England a lot, and Danny can talk about this. I mean, I'm sure we see it everywhere, but like in New England, especially with our outdoor grows, we always have these moisture issues, especially at the end of the seasons here, which are not so prevalent out west, right?
Well,
right.
it is.
NorCal.
The thing to do there is to try to use light deprivation, and when you use light deprivation, you could bring in the crop by September 15th before the weather changes.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, we got a lot of guys that try that here. We just have a short season. The Cryo Cure, man, for us, like we're always preaching like the purest, most quality products we can get. Like I said, Brandon was talking about before. We've had it, we've seen it, guys. We have people locally that do this. It's not a Cryo Cure system, but it's close. And as you can see, here's a beautiful bud right here that Greg's got for us, guys. Everybody asks about the texture. You know what I mean? Again, everybody's calling this they think it's a gimmick, but we're talking about it. If we can cut the time off your cures, right, and get these things to market faster. If you can get the moisture out, you don't have to worry about extra cure. Now that was the other thing with it that a lot of people that we've dealt with, because I've had it, I've had friends try it. I put it in people's hands a lot because for me that's like the closest thing to medicine if you want to smoke. You know what I mean? Am I off on that? I mean, it burns so clean.
No choke.
And it's really it's an entourage effect. It's the entourage effect.
And then it's no cracks either. You don't get that couch lock effect. You're functional, creative, sparkly, as I call it. And I'm a microdoser. I have been most of my life. And to me, this is just the cleanest way to get through my day feeling.
Froze up. I would say, I mean, it retains that bag appeal. It doesn't shrink up and brown up the way that, traditional curing does. And I'm not opposed to traditional curing and drying. I think it has its place, of course, but I think this is a technology that really needs to be, a part of the canon. And, like I said, the look of it, the taste of it, the preservation of terpenoids, flavonoids, cannabinoids, is very interesting implications for flour, for hash, and even for isolation purposes. I think there's so many amazing things that can come out of the cryo curing technology.
Now, do you think it will give you? I mean, let's talk about this for a minute. We talked about the entourage effect, right, guys? And I'm sure we've all tried this. These products, right? Danny, I'm sure you can answer this great too. But what's the difference between? Is there a difference between the cryo cure and the aged cured, traditionally done aneurysm with the same flour? Will there be a difference?
Yeah, I mean, there's the differences I mentioned being the shrinkage that occurs, the sort of browning that occurs in the traditional curing process. Here, you avoid that because basically over a 24-hour period, the product is finished and ready. So you're saving yourself time, and you're preserving those things that can be lost to the air and lost basically just over that like long-term process. And if anyone's ever grown a full crop and then put it into jars and opened the jar and smelled that like ammonia smell and just known that things were off, how devastating that can be after all the work that you went through to create that product from start to finish, and then just to have it go bad in the end. It's such a disappointment. And so the cryo cure, you put it in the machine, and 24 hours or so later, you pull it out and it's a smokable product, and green as it was when it went in, same size as it was when it went in. So the bag appeal is there. And then, when you consume it, it does have just a brighter effect. I don't know how better to describe it. It's just a little bit brighter and fresher, the same way that, you can freshen up a salad with lemon juice or something. It's like it just has a better freshness to it.
I like how you explain it that way, because I mean we've smoked it, and we've had other people smoke it, and I guess the biggest criticism that we've seen come back on our end was like, oh, it didn't it's not that strong. And I go, well, how'd your elbows? And that's how we were talking about the difference of a high, because if you get a product that actually has a lot of cannabinoids in it, and we talk about isolates and distillates and holes and full spectrums and broad spectrum stuff, right?
Well, I think it's important. I think it's really important to note that the effect that they're feeling is from a larger amount of available THCA.
Yes.
So there's like a big difference between a Delta 9 heavy high and a THCA high. I think that is the main difference in the effect that they're feeling.
Right, and I think CBN as well, because when THC and CBD degrade, they turn to CBN. It becomes a more lethargic high, and it really does have a more, basically sedative effect. So if the older I get, the more I want the spark and the electricity and
I'm busy. We're busy
here,
so I don't want to be stuck avoiding my phone. I need to be able to pick up the phone and handle
business.
So.
I mean, so guys, look, we've heard so many really, really amazing things about CryoCure and like all these super positives. Can you guys think of, is there a downside to CryoCure? Is there any sort of a negative side, I guess, to it at all? Have you guys found anything?
One it is if you already have all your packaging.
Yeah, if you spend a whole bunch of money on packaging and you have your ideas set on packaging, it might be thrown off a little. You might have to go one step up because it is double its size. Because of there being no shrinkage, a 3.5 is going to fit into a 7-gram container.
Yeah.
Wow.
Don't stay in the machine when it's working.
What's that, Ed?
Don't stay in the machine when it's working.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the downside.
That's the downside.
If you really want to go full Disney or Ted Williams, that we can schedule appointments.
I'm glad you say that, because when everybody talks CryoCure, we talk about the first, or cryo. Everybody thinks like these human cryogenics, right?
Right.
So everybody asks me, how long does the weed last? You know what I mean? Like, ideal situations. I mean, this weed, this cannabis should never degrade, right?
The bud that I just showed you was 6 months. The bud I just showed you was 6 months old.
Yeah.
So we have
samples that are 2.5 or 3 years old now.
Yeah. No,
and they look exactly the same.
I would say we have samples that are about 2 years old.
I haven't been able to get any of it to last more than a week.
That's right. You can put it away and not look for it.
I hide it in my house. It's been hidden, and every once in a while I'll just look up on the top shelf and be like, oh shit, there's that one. Then I pull it out and it looks the same. I'm just, okay, back it goes.
Yeah.
Go visit them.
Well, I mean, out here, man, Rick Nye, he's one of our big legends out here as well, and one of our big activists. He's been on the show, and we've been talking about CryoCure for about a year now. Is when you guys started talking with Rick, right? So I mean, it's very interesting because I mean, when we look online and we're promoting the show, everyone's like, it's a gimmick, it doesn't work, we don't feel it. It's like, I wonder how many people have tried the real thing versus what we were talking about earlier. People just make an attempt, and like, there is a window that makes it work well, and if you get outside that window, we can have these frosted issues like we were talking about before. I've seen some where like you could like literally it felt like I can't even explain, like frosted ice something that you're gonna break it. You know what I mean? And I've also seen really good versions of it where it's just I wanted to throw it in a press and see what I could get out of it. Because like you said, the terp values. Medical minded. We always talk about the terpene values, right? Dan, I'm sure you can explain that, and Ed as well, and the cannabinoids. Like we talked to Dr. Uma. Rick, we're all promoting, the entourage effects, and how do we achieve that? We see like extraction processes can take out a lot of these cannabinoids, and here we are now. You guys offer a flower. I think it's wonderful. I smoke it a lot. I'm not gonna lie. The only problem I have with it is I can't stop smoking it because it's really clean, and I know that goes back to the growers that grow it. I know personally the grower that grows it holds himself to a very high standard. He's growing medically minded cannabis, but on that note, I mean, it's funny because when we have patients that we talk to, I've been actually really referring them to the CryoCure mentality. Now, with that being said, how accessible is this to the everyday person to be able to get a CryoCure machine and be able to do this with their product? Is this something that it can only be achievable for a commercial style company, or is this something that me and Danny and Ed can throw on the counter and CryoCure every night?
Oh, yeah. Well, we are happy to say we are working on a smaller model for home use. It's literally in development right now with our vapor physicist. We have a vapor physicist on board. I love saying that. But it is off the drawing boards now as we speak, and we're meeting with the manufacturer tomorrow. So it's coming right along. We are very excited to serve the smaller grower market. But at the end of the day, we want to get this in the hands of every patient that wants it. So we do make our machines on a larger scale so we can get the finished flower out there as well. So our goal is to be able to get any size to anybody, but being new and we're just kicking right along, and thanks to the support of everybody on our team, it's happening very fast. Someone once said that it looks like you guys have a rocket strapped on your back, and it is. It's great, and we're here for the long haul. One of the things I just want to make clear is there's some people going around that have tried just traditional freeze drying of cannabis, and they're telling everybody that you have to rehydrate your cannabis after it comes out of the freeze dryer. We're here to say, please don't do that. Ed can attest, and Danny, I'm sure, that adding moisture back into your finished cannabis is nothing but trouble. So that's not what we do. It comes out at a perfect moisture content, ready to smoke. So we just want to make sure everybody we're here to teach. This is so new. We're here to educate everybody, and thank you for the platform to do that.
Definitely.
Well, Tracee and Greg, I actually I wanted to address that. You mentioned that you're going to be doing small scale as well for the home user. That's fantastic because most of my clientele, most of the customers that I work with are residential customers. They are medical patients, and I do preach the abilities of CryoCure and stuff to them as well, but not a single one of them is able to afford a large machine like that or have the space for it either. So
understood.
Something on a smaller scale for them is fantastic because now I don't have to continue saying, oh yeah, you can go get that food freeze dryer and we can tinker with it and try to make it work for you. Now they can get something right off the shelf that's going to work right off the bat. It's designed to work for cannabis.
Right.
Another thing is if there are two things. One is for entrepreneurs, and the other is for co-ops, especially where people could cooperatively buy a machine, a group of people, or else an entrepreneur could buy a machine, put it, make it mobile, and go from place to place, doing drying as it's needed, because if you're a home user or a small commercial user, you're only going to use the machine part of the time. And these machines are made to be used all the time. So
we'll never get them super cheap, unfortunately.
Give people an idea of what kind of temperatures we're talking about, just so they understand why this isn't, can't be
first,
affordable.
It's not going to be a washing. It's not going. In the foreseeable future, it's not going to be the cost of a washing machine because it's too technical, and Danny was just going to mention about that.
Yeah, I would say Greg and Tracee, give people an idea of what kind of technology is involved so they understand why, it's priced the way it is.
Yeah, absolutely. You're dealing with vacuum pumps. Just essentially a really good vacuum pump that's not going to break down, and that's like the lungs of this machine. Mm-hmm. You're looking at $1,500 just for the vacuum pump, and that's just the lungs. Now, when you're talking about the temperatures as to how cold it can go, you're going to need at least like 2 tons of AC, like what you would normally have almost on your house, like your house air conditioning, to be able to achieve the temperatures that we're going to. Okay. So you can imagine, the components to these machines are they're not cheap. The science to make it work is not cheap. And that's unfortunate until the day that we, can be able to produce them at such a large scale and then we could realize economies, obviously. But
still not the price of a washing machine.
But still not the price of a washing machine, unfortunately, because of those components. So it's important to understand. Now, you could rig stuff at home for home experiments. You could do exactly what Ed did. Ed said it best to one of our clients. He said, you can do your own experiment at home. He said you could put a bud in the cupboard and let it traditionally dry. You can put one in the freezer and then put one in the microwave. And you tell me what's the best.
Put one in the cupboard, and you see what comes out. And when you put it in a home freezer, it's going to take a bit longer, and it's not going to be exactly the same, but it will give you an idea of it. And it gave Tracee enough of an idea of it to look into it, right? Once you tried it in your freezer, you said, "Wow!" And it's true. I mean, like, if you're a home grower, you could buy a good like not even industrial freezer, maybe a commercial freezer or a home freezer, and just put the buds in there, and it takes longer. You have to check on it. It's not automatic. It doesn't have the phases that this goes through, but it isn't bad. It doesn't have the advantages of this machine, but better than nothing.
Right.
That's right. If you want to do an experiment, that's just an idea. So if you want to do an experiment on your own at home, that's the easiest way to do it.
If a person has a pound, if a person has a pound, they're not going to buy a machine, right?
No.
But they could put it in the freezer.
Right. Exactly.
Well, I mean, I know one of the biggest complaints, and it's not just on CryoCure's machines, really any machine in the industry, right down to the presses, is the expense, and some things are easily explainable and understood, and other things that you're like, man, just because they're in the cannabis industry, there really isn't a gimmick here, right? I mean, everybody's talking about the gimmicks. We have you have Ed Rosenthal talking about a product like he is. I don't understand how people can consider this a gimmick, and we're looking at just the values and the things you hold. One thing I wanted to make point of is trichomes, right? We're getting asked about trichomes, because when we talk about bubble hash and we want to knock off trichomes, everybody's like, let's go in your freezer. Does this have any effect on trichomes? And before you answer that, I just want to give you my little end of it, because it's a question that came in. Everything I've seen that came through in a jar or a bag, I've never seen the keef at the bottom of the jar with CryoCure, right? How do you hold? Is there any danger to the trichomes?
Well, it doesn't get as dry. With CryoCure, you can adjust the moisture content of the bud at the end. I mean, what you're going to wind up with. So, if you don't want something, unless you're going to extract it, you don't want something that's totally void of moisture. You want 10 or 12% moisture. Hard to judge that sometimes, but with this machine, you can just dial that in, and so that it it's not crackly.
Right. Yes,
I know. I said that the dry sift that comes off of CryoCure, when that's pressed together, it's got a pliability to it that's different from traditionally dried and cured dry sift. It's like gummy. It's very much and it sticks to itself. It sticks to itself, and it really
there's no shrinkage, right? There's no shrinkage, so you get that.
The glands aren't shrinking down.
Yeah.
The gland has
the actual gland itself. Yeah.
The glands don't get dimples. If you look at traditional drying under a microscope, you'll see that the glands all have dimples on them, and those are the oils and the terpenes that have evaporated. But these don't have dimples because there isn't evaporation. Like draw the air out of your mouth, and you know how your mouth sinks in. There are the dimples.
Yeah.
Right there, and that's from in this case the terpenes, mostly the terpenes evaporating.
Now, Ed, let me ask you a quick question. We talk about this a lot, and this is something I don't think people concern themselves with, because I mean, we've had you on the show before, so we're very medically minded, and so we have two different states, right? We have a rec state and we have a medical state, right? And I think those two are very different in what people need. They're extremely different. I think the biggest problem with our industry right now is we cross over the two still. So like we have medical dispensaries selling stoner methods of getting high and not medicine to me, right? How many terpenes and how many cannabinoids do you think are lost with the common cure that we all talk about, our typical cure versus the cryo cure method?
Well, what's lost are the terpenes that the small terpenes that have small molecules, for instance, myrcene. So that the smaller the molecule, the lower the temperature that it will evaporate. So I don't know what the percentages are, but there's a definite difference in the quality of the cannabis. Do people know this from just like this? Stale cannabis doesn't give you the same high as fresh cannabis, right?
Right.
And it's hard to maintain it fresh unless you're freezing it. I mean, people say don't freeze cannabis. You read it in all the books, well, except mine, but you read it about it in the books. Don't freeze cannabis, but all of that is just not true.
Yeah.
You if you want to keep cannabis long term, the only way to keep it really fresh is by freezing.
Freezing, right? I mean, as a chef, so I went to culinary school. I'm a trained
Don't
chef.
shake it around. Well, don't shake it when it's frozen.
Right, because the trichomes will fall off. Right. I mean, bubble hash guys know these tricks a lot because we talk about trichomes and how to extract the trichome off the plant. The easiest way is we freeze it, right? And that's why I asked the question earlier, like, is there trichome loss? Because when you start handling it, your trichome will come off, the keef is coming off, and you get a bag full of stuff, right? So I was a chef for a long time.
I don't know what would happen if you put like some sort of tumbler in the cryo cure.
Yeah.
What glands would come off? That would be interesting.
That would be really cool. We were talking to last week. We were talking to Canatrim out of Vermont, and they was telling us about this cool new mechanical product that they have. It's basically a tumbler that catches trichomes. So you just spin it and spin it and spin it, and as they're trimming it, it's catching all the trichomes for this really unique keef. That'd be actually kind of a cool idea to try and see what it does with the CryoCure. Again, people talk about this stuff. As a chef, when I first heard about it, I had to think about it for a minute because, I'm a chef, I'm trained. First thing you ever learn in food is you don't put lettuce in the freezer, right? And a lot of people don't understand the theory behind that. And same with meats. Like, you don't want to refreeze meat twice. Why? Because when you freeze water, what does it do? It expands, right? So when you have something that's fibrous and easy, as delicate as what we call greens, Danny had brought up earlier about a couple of the IQF process in the food industry is, freeze as fast as you can, as cold as you can, and that way the water either evaporates or stays there. So when you thaw it, it doesn't just crush all the fibers in it, right? And it can do it with meat, stuff like that. With this technology, how cold are we talking?
Negative 20 degrees for an hour.
Negative 20 degrees for an hour, and you have to get there like super quick, correct?
Yeah. Well, I mean, within an hour after taking your plant down. That's kind of just like rule of thumb, just to preserve its freshness. It starts to degrade within that 60 minutes after it's taken down.
So technically speaking, if you were to chop a plant and you could throw it right in the CryoCure,
if you wanted to, yeah.
It's frozen for an hour,
right?
And then it takes 12 hours, so it could be technically done in 13 hours.
Yeah, that's we only need an hour to freeze the flour, and then 12 hours to dry the flour. Right. Then after that, you have a small window of leveling out the moisture, which that's what we kind of throw in the 24 hours, just because it's going to take a little bit to level that moisture. Because the way our process works, it's almost like skipping the hanging phase. The flour is going to come out of the machine with around a 5% moisture content on the outside and around a 14 to 16% on the inside. So once that moisture is leveled out and done that essential, what people call a burp, it's just one burp just to level that moisture out. It finishes right around 8 to 12% moisture content depending upon the cultivar.
I mean, it sounds like magic. I got to be honest with you, it really does.
No, it never gets old.
That's what they said. That's what they said about science back in the day, right? When anybody brought real science, it's like he's a magician. Let's burn him at the stake. Don't burn me at the stake, please.
No, but you guys mentioned, that obviously people are out there saying, "Oh, this is a gimmick." Ed and I, we've been in this industry a long, long time. Ed longer than myself. But we approach any new technology with healthy skepticism. You know what I mean? People are constantly saying, I've got the thing that's going to change everything, and this and that and the other. And it's the same way we approached this CryoCure technology. And so, but we've seen the light, and we've seen, that there's obvious good implications from it. And all you have to do is look at in traditional curing and drying. The coldness of the room that you do it in is directly related to how much terpene preservation there is in the final product in that case as well. And this is just, that in extreme form, obviously.
Well, I mean, if you're a commercial grower, right, and you look at this technology, I know you guys make some big units, right? I mean, like walk-in style units. When we talk about technology, there's always a cost. I mean, there's always something to it. But I imagine, we brought up earlier, it might not be the most cost effective for the home user, just because of the science and the mechanicals needed behind it, right? But for a commercial grower now, right? Let's talk about this. I mean, if you're a big commercial grower and you're constantly taking down every month, this must be a huge save for the commercial industry, right?
Oh yeah. I would imagine. Well, I mean, if you could dry 600 pounds in one day,
and have it ready
with
to go
one machine, that'll change your ROI immediately.
You could do 1,200 if you pre-freeze it.
Well, no, I'm dry.
Oh, dry.
Total dry pounds. Now we're talking dry pounds. The large machine can do up to 600 dry pounds a day, and that's based off of 2 12-hour cycles.
And you're saying dry time, so I mean, you're putting in probably a good 800. Because you guys don't lose a lot, but it does get light.
No, it's not. You're talking wet weight. Now, if we want to talk about conversion ratios, we'd be talking about 1,200 wet pounds a day.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And
that's your one machine.
I apologize. Up to that, I'm sorry. That's 2,400 wet pounds a day. Yeah. So you got to look at it's at a 1-to-4 ratio.
Oh, okay.
Dry to wet.
Let me ask you a funny question, right? Because like we all said, we're all kind of like weird, just minded skepticals, right? You must be pulling the water out of these plants, right? In these big machines, does it just run off into a bucket and you can use it and feed your plants again? Like,
oh no, there's a small amount of fats, lipids, and starches, and some of them, like Ed was saying, some of the light monoterpenes will be in there. You'll have the ability to defrost the water out of the back of the machine into a catch to where you can separate it and actually collect those terpenes for other product usage. There's definitely a byproduct there. I actually have a friend who uses the stuff for his beard oil. So I mean, there's an application for that water, for that moisture.
And we have a setting on the machine, believe it or not, for terpene harvesting. If you want to just pull all the terpenes out and use those for byproducts.
Wow. Right. For instance, cannabis-derived, hemp-derived terpenes can go for $50 to $100 a milliliter.
Yep.
Which make that the most valuable part of the cannabis plant. Yep. So a lot of those hemp farmers who have very nice varieties with really nice terpene profiles that are just sending it off to be thrown into an ISO bath, you're kind of throwing money away. And this machine will allow you to dry your cannabis or your hemp out for pre-processing down to a 5% moisture content and remove all of the terpene profile off of it ahead of time. So you have a lot of terpene content. We're able to remove 95% of the available terpene profile from any biomass.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Amazing.
I mean, once again, it sounds too good to be true.
Right.
I'm just saying.
I know, right?
Well, that's one of our biggest questions, and you nailed it for me, Greg. Was is there any byproducts from it? What's the runoff? Is it something that's usable? And you may sound like everything that's coming off of it has a usable factor, and then even a whole nother potential market for, right? I mean,
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Just like the plant itself, the plant can be it gives back, and that's basically what the machine does. It'll help preserve that plant and give you a bunch of different options of what you can do. This is essentially a tool. It's not just used for drying cannabis. It's used for separating terpenes. It's used for being able to just
Remove moisture.
remove the moisture at a fast rate. For example, people who are in foreign countries where they can't sell the actual cannabis flower, it all goes to oil production. To be able to speed that dry time up from 2 weeks, especially in those humid climates, to have it ready in 24 hours is just it's very valuable.
Right, and
So it's a tool, and it can be used for edibles. We're playing with medicated ice cream. We freeze dry the ice cream and make actually ice cream bars, and we've been dipping them in medicated chocolate. So there's
hey, if you guys need
tons of different
testers,
applications.
What exactly? Where are you in the United States?
Oh yeah, we're in Michigan.
yeah, nice.
Dude, just send me your address. I think I need to come hang out with you guys for a day.
You guys are more than welcome to come by when you guys are in town.
Well,
For sure.
you kind of went right in the direction that I was going to ask you about. So we talk about the hemp industry, right? And one of the biggest parts of the hemp industry right now would be textiles and fibers, right? And we talk about one of the biggest problems with American hemp is getting it soft enough to be able to use in T-shirts and clothing, right? Levi's has developed some technology, stuff like that. Now, just in talking with us, and we're talking about what it does for the plant, it seems like it gets the water out and it almost softens it up a little bit. Like, would this be something that we could actually throw like our plant biomass in there for like our stocks and stuff in there? Cryo cure?
Absolutely. I've never really thought about it for like fiber production, but yeah, I'm sure, because it does. It just keeps it. Everything about it is soft. I mean, if you guys have broken it up, that's kind of a good way to describe the way it breaks up. It's a soft breakdown. It's just, and it's not powder. It's more of just, I don't know. I think that it's a fresh, soft feel and breakdown. So I can imagine it.
It still feels like it's off the plant. Like some of the hardcore guys that I know, the old school guys, the first thing they did when they looked at it was what you did. They tried to bend the plant. Usually, that's how you tell a good cure, right? Or a good dry and moisture level. And they're like, what is this? Because it's like if you were to go on the plant right now and go bend that stem, it probably feels pretty close to the cryocure bend, right?
Absolutely. That's actually what we based our whole entire process off of. When I was done, the stem snap, because we designed it to skip that hanging phase of drying.
Yeah.
So that was the idea, is just to be able to skip that whole week, 10-day period where it's hanging in a room so archaically, swinging around with fans and dehumidifiers blowing on it,
Gnats flying around.
Yeah, who knows what type of contamination is as clean as you want to be. There's still microbes in the air. So that's kind of what we designed it to. We based everything off of the stem. When I pulled it out of the machine, the first thing I did was take the stem and do this. And when it oversnapped, when it broke in half, I'm like, okay, we're not there. I can already tell that we're not there. I wanted the feel of that traditional, like, okay, when I walk into my dry room and I bend that stem, that's what I'm looking for. So that's a perfect example of what our process is.
I got a question. I mean, you actually made a really good point just now. You said that, obviously in the average environment, there would be microbes and stuff that would be in the air. If you were to have a cryocure machine that was actually within a sterile lab, would that produce a better quality product?
No, I don't know if we would. Would you? I don't know if we would ever see the effects, but yeah, I mean, obviously, yes. Essentially, yeah. That would be in my brain. That's where medical cannabis, how it should be, right?
Yeah.
When anybody says medical in my brain, I immediately go to guys in white suits. And,
spray in, spray out, white jumpsuit, full helmet, right? Exactly.
Yeah, well, I can tell. I can promise you this: nothing lives at negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit under an absolute vacuum. I can promise you that.
Right.
Nothing will live.
I wanted to mention also. One of the first times I brought this up with Ed, he mentioned that, he thought that the traditional drying and curing process was potentially the way it is due to prohibition. and due to the fact that we had to hide our harvests and not allow them, those odors to escape and all of that. I want to see if maybe Ed could maybe speak to that as well, and that we've all kind of been convinced that we have to dry and cure in the traditional manner
in our closet.
Right.
Right.
The drying, you wanted the air, you would ventilate, but you wanted the air to leave the room, so you'd use a carbon filter or something like that. That didn't affect the plant, but then people got the idea that they had to sort of mellow the plant and put it in this jar where it would ferment a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I never understood how that really caught on, but it did. And I think it's ruined probably tens of millions of pounds of perfectly good pot over the years.
The jar process?
Yeah. Yes.
No, I think you make a good point. A lot of people really rely on it out here, but they typically put in, or they're putting in like the moisture bags, whichever company they get them from. But the little bags that take care of the moisture, get it perfectly right. They put in a jar. Now, I've talked to a few farms, and there were hemp farms a few years ago when we had a really bad, humid end of the season. They were cracking jars, right? And then all their wheat ended up molding out, right? I think a lot of people think about when they're burping jars or letting the off gases out, but they don't think about the relative humidity in the room they're standing in, right? Because you can actually reintroduce humidity back into your jar, and now you're capping it, right? And we're talking about molds. This is where it all starts a lot, right?
Yeah.
Right. It's such a fine line between, those things, and it's very easy to err on the side of that moldy, just that ammonia kind of smell that you smell. That just is a perfect signal that it's ruined, and you can avoid all that if you like, and speed up the process.
That's an indication of anaerobic bacteria. That means that the bacteria that use oxygen the way we do, that they've used up all the oxygen. And then the anaerobic bacteria, which use different chemical processes to get energy, they get it. And that's where you get the ferment. Like it tends down.
It's composting.
And things.
Yeah.
But all I think that virtually all cured marijuana has lost certain chemistry because of the curing process. And you see it even in industrial things. They'll have these 20-gallon containers that curing it. I think of it, why are you curing this? This pot isn't ill. Why are you curing it?
Well, let me ask you another question, though. We all know there's a shelf life on cured cannabis, right? I mean, it doesn't last forever. It degrades, and you start to get that.
You could make it last forever. You just keep it frozen.
Well, that's a thing. You know what I mean? Now, we're talking about freezing it. It will stay forever frozen, right? And then the cryo cure comes out, and now it's back into relative air humidity, right? Then we talk about cured cannabis. A lot of us, we've all been there. We've all tried some weed that's a little old. You can taste it. It's, some people don't care. I taste it. What's the shelf life difference between, a cured bag of cannabis, the old school way, versus the cryo cure sitting in a bag, in the same bag?
That's a good question.
Well, it's a freeze-dried process. So just like food, and astronaut food, it has an extremely long shelf life.
Yep.
Because we just started this a few years ago, we only have that long of a test.
Yeah.
But from our understanding, if you keep it sealed up just like it is, it could last 25, 30 years. But again, like Ed says, who in the hell's got cannabis around that long anyway?
Yeah, right. Especially when it's that good, Right.
Yeah. But it does maintain its shelf life a heck of a lot longer than traditional cured, without a doubt. It maintains its properties throughout the whole time it's sealed up.
Right. Well, a lot of people don't realize, but bacteria is grown through moisture, right? So, like, if we can devoid any food or any product of moisture, it's going to retain a longer shelf life, right? A lot of people, don't take that for granted. When you think about, like, again, we go back to vegetables, right? They are full of water, right? So they're usually the first thing that will rot out. And then you go to meats, and then your various things. It's most of our dry stuff never rots out. You can take dried parsley and keep it on our shelves for years, but you can't keep it on the counter for a week. Which is really interesting. Now, we've talked a lot about Cryo today, guys, and it's really amazing. Like we said, it's kind of like it's kind of like magic in a way, to the point where still people do not believe in it. They're going to fight you for it, but that happens with every brand new technology that comes out and revolutionizes the industry, right? We know that from experience as well. But what you're doing is great. For the medical side of things is really what I want to push for people to start understanding, because like we all just sat here and talked. We've listened to two legends literally back this up. Ed Rosenthal, like the guru of ganja. There's no one should ever question anything that Ed says, really, right? But technology speaks for itself right now, and seeing Ed, who's been in the industry for so long, who's done almost probably every experiment that we could all possibly think of, and then which led Tracee and Greg to this idea through a book that was 10 years ago now, you said, right? And look at where we are today. So the experience is awesome. I can't wait I hope you guys really get it more and more out there. You guys sell a bunch of different units, correct? Or do you just have a couple options?
We do. We have two options. We have a medium-sized machine, which will handle 30 to 60 wet pounds per run. And then our larger machine is anywhere between 600 to 1,200 wet pounds per run. And that's all dependent upon the cultivar, because every cultivar has different density and takes up a different square footprint on the shelves.
Right. I mean, it's truly remarkable stuff, guys. I hope more people look into it. And I mean, it's literally, we talk about these technologies and these needs every day. Terpenes, cannabinoids, your endocannabinoid system, entourage effects, right? And I still don't think a lot of people know what that is yet. Like we were talking about, like the shine, that feeling you get when your fingers and your elbows are tingling, and you're not just getting that cranium punch in the head from that THC or that off gas or that alcohol they didn't really off gas correct in a cart. You know what I mean? So this changes the whole industry. I love what you guys are doing. And now, we have some time left. We still talk about Cryo, and for the people who...
Well, can we talk about Danny and Ed's?
Yes, that's where I was going to go right now. So we have two legends sitting here in front of us, right? And, some of the new people to the industry, to the realm, right, might not understand who Danny is, and I don't know how that ever could be, but or who Ed Rosenthal is. So, again, you guys are speaking behind the product. And you guys have some great things happening as well. Ed has books coming out all the time. I believe it's got a brand new book that came out. Danny, you're the history that when I was a kid, it was like you and Jorge. You know what I mean? I got the books. We've had that on the show before. I really want to help you out and tell everybody what you're doing now, because I saw this thing the other day, this any leaf thing, right? Which literally had me stoked for you, man, because I know you quite haven't been in that position in a while. You've been a huge activist for us in the New England scene, and you're out everywhere. You support us. Where what is it? Northeast Leaf come from?
Northeast Leaf, yeah. It's just actually we partnered with an existing publisher for 10 years. They've been making Northwest Leaf out of Washington State, and so they've expanded from Northwest Leaf over the years into Maryland Leaf, Alaska Leaf, Oregon Leaf, California Leaf, and so basically, they're now expanding to the Northeast region, and so myself and 4 other High Times colleagues who had either been laid off or left the magazine over the last couple of years decided to put the band back together and get back into print media.
That's awesome.
We're very excited. It's a free magazine as well. I don't think you can charge people at this point for print media. No. I think that model is dying, and I think it's important at this point. As long as you're not writing books, if you're putting out a magazine every month, make it free to the public, charge the advertisers to reach that public. And that's the model that we're working on. And just very exciting. Our first issue comes out in September. people can check out our website, anyleafmag.com. And we're on all the social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. So there's that. And I'm continuing to do my podcast called Grow Bud Yourself on a weekly basis as well. I got my book, Cannabis, Beginner's Guide to Growing Marijuana, very basic beginner book for people that are interested in getting started. And just recently wrote a chapter in Ed's new book as well, the revised edition of his classic tome. So, just it's been great, especially, with all these companies that are, shrinking and, dealing with the coronavirus and all the downsizing that comes with that, to be involved in something that's actually expanding and getting bigger. So yeah, we're excited. We made the New York Post today.
Yeah, I saw that article.
And yeah.
Well, I mean,
and High Times is sort of pivoting away from media. They're interested in buying dispensaries and going public, and it's a brand that I love. I worked there for many years, and I wish them all the best. But I'm interested in covering the cannabis community, the industry, the culture. I'm from the Northeast. I grew up in Boston. I live in New York City. All of us who are on staff so far are all from the area, and very excited to be, one of the voices of the region, because we have a very unique history.
Yeah. No, it's great, and you kind of you kind of nailed something on the head that I wanted to ask you about, and it's we talk about print publications, and you talked about High Times, how they're moving away, and everybody's kind of moving away to the print digital platform. Now it seems like these print magazines are becoming really highly sought after and more of a collector's piece, right?
Yeah, well, that's our plan. I mean, we're interested in having every cover be, a work of art. We're not going to clutter it up with cover lines or anything. We really want people to pick it up and want to, put a frame around it. And, we want to cover the industry and the community. So, we need help. We need advertisers. We need contributors. We need, subscribers. We need distributors, people who, if you own a shop or you got a place that people come through that, you'd appreciate having a bundle of 25 or 50 magazines dropped off. They're free to the public. They're free to distribute. And, we just want to get them out there and have people excited to read them and check them out. And it's not, for, snobs or anything like that either. We want it to be very inclusive to people that are just getting interested in cannabis, medical patients, seniors, veterans, all different types of people that, because everybody can benefit from cannabis in one way or another. And we just want to get that information out there without, not intimidating people or making people feel inferior, but really welcoming them into, the fold.
And it sounds like you have a New England focus on the New England industries with, all the
it's New England,
right?
New England, yeah, it's 8 states total. So New England and the tri-state area here, where I am, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Rhode Island. So all the way up to Maine. So it's 8 total states that we're covering so far. And, Leaf Nation continues to expand. We have plans for an Amsterdam Leaf, a Barcelona Leaf, and many more to come, until ultimately we want to be the biggest print journalism cannabis magazine in the world at some point. So we're just going to keep printing and giving copies away and trying to be a voice for the culture and the people.
Right. Well, it's awesome, man. Huge congratulations. I'm glad to see you back in print publications. Man, I've read so many articles in the High Times when I was younger. So again, it's a true honor to have you here. And thank you, man, for staying with the scene and keep doing what you're doing, because a lot of people have moved away from that platform, and we've seen you in the activism scene, so it's been there and everything's on social media nowadays. It seems like, there's no way to sit down and just open a book anymore, unless, you're reading an Ed Rosenthal book and educating yourself. And huge congratulations to being in an Ed Rosenthal book, because that alone has to be a huge honor for you. Just to be in that mention and in that publication, man. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. It is an honor. I grew up learning how to grow from Ed and learning not only how to grow, but that growing cultivation is a political act. You know, every gram that you grow is another you know peaceful, you know, warrior weaponry, you know, for us to fight against prohibition of cannabis. And so even if you don't know it, you're actually committing a political act when you grow cannabis and when you smoke it too.
Well,
oh,
overgrow the government.
yeah,
That's right.
we know you. No,
Overgrow the government.
we totally love it.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that, again, you guys both being on, which is what's huge for us, is that you guys been heavily embedded in this industry for so long, right? Like, you know, I don't think that anything Ed says could ever be questioned. You know what I mean? Because he's done it. He's been it. He's put science behind it. You know, even with the crowd crew, he's standing here literally putting the science behind it for us guys. You being a New England tri-state area guy, Dan, what's been the biggest thing? I mean, we've seen a lot in the last few years happen out here in the East Coast, right? Because, I mean, you're writing for High Times, who's kind of based on the West Coast. The scene's been huge for years. You've been doing it for years. Let's talk about the East Coast scene really quick, right, while I have you here. Because tell me what you're seeing, the best parts are happening right now, because it's literally, it's kind of like the West Coast was 10 years ago, right? There's still a lot of excitement out here.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity, a lot of excitement. I think, you know, I mean, High Times was based in the East Coast for up until the last 2 or 3 years or so. You know, we were based in New York City. But I see a lot of change coming. Obviously, you know, the laws in Massachusetts, you know, with dispensaries and adult use are pretty outstanding. Maine as well. I think, you know, once Connecticut, New York, and New Jersey pass some type of adult use, then we're really well on our way. But we have a long history here of cultivation, of course, Vermont and Western Mass, but all throughout the region. And, you know, strains that have come from the region, including, you know, Chemdog and Sour Diesel and the like. And, you know, the delivery services of New York. And so there's lots of interesting stories and lots of culture that goes back many years. But I do think things are changing very rapidly. The thing for me is you know, I love to see a legal landscape. I love to see things get more open, but I'm opposed to the overregulation that exists and the overtaxing and just a lot of hoops that people have to jump through. And I want a level playing field so that, you know, the mom and pops and the small farmers and the farmers markets and things like that can actually compete against these well-funded dispensaries, because there's room for everybody there. But I want to purchase small batch cannabis grown in a living soil, you know, processed properly and done the right way. And I want that option to be available to everyone, so that, you know, you can go to the dispensary and purchase, you know, pre-rolls if you'd like, or you can get a nice jar from the farm down the road. And I think that's, you know, and that's important. And I think, you know, obviously freeing all the prisoners that are locked up for nonviolent cannabis offenses is important, expunging the criminal records, social use where we can get together, and the ability to grow our own. All those things are so important and worth fighting for. And that's the legal landscape I envision, you know, where all those things are available to, you know, the medical patients, to the consumers, aficionados, connoisseurs, whoever.
Now, do you think we're going to get there soon, or is it going to be a few years still?
You know, we're getting there state by state. I think, you know, the interesting thing is it's not a partisan issue. You know, people from all walks of life consume cannabis. People from, you know, every race, every age group, every, you know, denomination of people. Everybody, there's people in all those groups that consume cannabis, and most people, if you ask them, think it shouldn't be illegal and it should be readily available. So I'm hoping that we do get there. I know there's a lot standing in our way, you know, big businesses and special interests, but the plant just continues to amaze me, and the plant is a survivor and a thriver, and I think ultimately we will get there.
Nice. Hopefully, I love your outlook, because we feel the same way. I believe, you know, we should be able to go down to the farm stand on the side of the road and be able to pick our buds, right, and know our grower and say hi and shake a hand, you know.
Well, the first thing that we have to have is free, legal backyard marijuana.
Yes.
And when I say backyard or indoors, but people have to be able to grow it. That's the very first thing.
Very important.
That grow your own, and then you can share it with your neighbors, and that's number one. Let's start right there and free all the prisoners.
Yes. And two and 4 plants are not enough for people to grow and maintain, especially for a medical patient. Some of these states' laws that do allow us to grow are kind of ridiculous in a lot of instances, especially here in Vermont, where we have a really no recreational system at all, and it's just medical. And
it's really stopped people in Vermont from growing. I know that.
Yeah, it's not stopping us. That's for sure. It's a beautiful
the Green Mountain State.
The
Green Mountain State. I think, once New York, Connecticut, and New Jersey go, then you have the majority of the population living in states with some type of adult use. And at that point, the federal government has to look into descheduling on a federal level, not rescheduling to Schedule 2 or 3, where pharmaceutical companies can take over, but descheduling, because nicotine isn't on a schedule, alcohol is not on a schedule. Sugar.
Danny, you're just talking rationally.
Well, I know how Danny is, and this is why I'm having this conversation, because he thinks a lot like us.
But that doesn't have to do with the politics of it all.
No,
true. I mean, we get what we demand.
Yeah. Hey, and Danny, remember this: that we go to these marijuana conferences, and post marijuana conference, what maybe half the people are doing. They're having a drink downstairs.
Right. Yep.
Right.
That's a part of the industry that actually kind of bothers me a lot when we go to these industry events and there's like 5 bars. It's like, oh man, not that I don't mind. Smoking. Yeah, I mean it's legal, but Danny, I think you said a good thing. I always ask my guests this every time someone comes on every week, and it probably gets annoying to people, but for me, when we talk about legalization on a federal level, we always talk about, with legalization is going to come regulations, right? Should the government be involved in any of the regulations? And right now, a lot of people say no, because this should be a state thing. We're medically minded people. You just kind of, tip that light off on my head a couple of times. Should the federal government be like the FDA over the medical industry, or should we just leave it to everybody's state again and hope that the regulatory systems that we're all shooting for either match up or become even, so that way every patient, every state has the same access to treatment, right? And like what we all want to do is see, obviously, insured or be free, but there is a cost to the process. How should we advance on the medical aspect of it?
I honestly think medical patients should be able to access cannabis for free. I think it should be part of our healthcare if that's what they're interested in, because as an alternative to, a lot of other pricier and less effective treatments, I think, it should be part of our healthcare plan if it's a medical patient. And I believe, I think, the whole idea of medical cannabis is to get the wounded off of the battlefield, and then, the war continues to go on. But anybody who needs cannabis to, stop themselves from having seizures or to combat the nausea that comes with chemotherapy or something like that, they shouldn't even have to pay a penny for it. Right. It should just be a part of their healthcare. And then those of us who just enjoy consuming cannabis should either be allowed to grow our own or purchase it, from a local source that we know and trust, or go to the dispensary or grow our own. There should be all the related options for that. And there's nothing wrong with people making money in the industry. I'm not opposed to that. I think it's important that there be a thriving cannabis industry, but that doesn't preclude people from being able to take themselves out of the industry and grow their own.
No, I totally agree. I think everybody should have that access, and it's kind of weird when we see certain states allow certain parts of that, not others. And like we said before, some states you have oil, some states you have flower, some states you can be a medical patient, but you can't be a recreational user. There's dispensaries. Now, obviously, I like the idea of being able to go down to my local store here and being able to have an option of cannabis on the shelf. Now, we all talk about like the cigarettes and the alcohol industry. We don't like to combine them or really talk about them, but why are we any different, really? You know what I mean? Why can't we go down and buy a pack of joints next to the cigarettes in the liquor store? You know what I mean? And just pay that same kind of tax. Why are we killing the patients right now? Because
Well,
they're the ones really paying for it.
it all depends what state you're in. If you're in New York State, then you can't buy a pack of cigarettes in a liquor store.
Right. Which is
I mean,
the
reality is there's still dry counties in states where you can't purchase alcohol, going back all the way to alcohol prohibition. So the rules are always going to be different wherever you go. Different areas are going to allow and be more lenient, and different areas are going to crack down. But no one should be in jail. No one should have their family harassed, or have their home invaded, their dogs shot, or lose access to kidney transplants and things like that. I mean, the amount of injustice that occurs right now based in cannabis prohibition is just outrageous, and it's the thing that got me involved in any kind of activism side of things, is just the tremendous amount of injustice that occurs to us because we choose to consume cannabis instead of all these other things. And as mine and Ed's friend Jack Harris said, if you replace opioids, alcohol, nicotine, even sugar in your life with cannabis, you'll live an extra 10 years and you'll live a better life. And that's important for people to understand. So if you have a friend that's struggling with addictions or dependencies, please urge them to try to use cannabis as an exit drug, to get them off of those things, because like I said, your life will improve and your life will be longer.
No, we're seeing that a lot right now, and you look at there's a huge effect that cannabis is having on the opioid industry right now. Oh yeah. The problem is the support from the states. You know what I mean? Here in Vermont, it's way easier to get help if you're an opioid user. Go to the clinic, you can get your daily dosages of whatever it is, Suboxone, meth, whatever, or methadone, whatever you want. But if the minute you go and take cannabis, they kick you out, right? So it's like these are these things that are really hard for us to understand. You know what I mean?
So what if you go and you say, "Oh, I'm a cannabis user"? What substitute do they give you?
Yeah, right. You know what I mean? What do they give us, right? And then we're seeing
well here in California, it goes in New York rather, it goes like this: if you have a prescription for an opioid, you can use it as a prescription for pot. So you know how they always used to say that marijuana leads to harder drugs, but here they're telling marijuana users to advance to pot.
Right. Well, I mean, Dr. Uma's famous quote, right? We talk about all the time.
I said heroin users to go to to use pot.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of really close friends that are opioid issues, and I've seen it firsthand what cannabis can do for these people. You know what I mean? Especially when they are trying to kick it through that next couple of weeks, right? And we talk about the support that the states have for some of these programs on the opioid or don't. You know what I mean? These are two industries that we could go on for days about, with issues and politics behind it, and government strategies and conspiracy theories, really, if we really want to get involved with it, right? Right down to Coke, to the whole nine, right down to the DEA, CEA, we don't need to do any of that, right? But I love where we're just going to switch gears really hard. I love where we're going right now as a country. Regulations, it's a question that we're going to have for a long time, until finally, like we said, the government decides to pull the string on something. We hope we see it sooner than later, but we never know. Ed, do we have you for a few more moments? I know that we didn't have you for a full show, but I don't want to not get a chance to talk to you really quick. And
actually, wanted to go to the seminar that I've been going to for several weeks. The Oaksterdam University has a cultivation seminar that I've been auditing. I want, because I work closely with them, and I in my revised growers handbook, I want to make sure that they correlate.
Let's talk.
So if you don't mind, we'd like to take off, and Is that okay?
Hey, Ed, that's perfectly fine.
I'd be happy to come back. I'd be happy to come back on anytime. You know.
Well,
And
we'll get you back on the show
here's
again.
the one thing that I have to say is that both Danny and I, we're associated with CryoCure. We're not independent in this, but I love the product, and it saves so much time. And for right now, for commercial establishments, this is a way to go. You eliminate the hanging stuff, the 2 weeks of drying, taking it down, pulling out the stuff that became infected. You eliminate all of that, and a day after you harvest, you could be selling the material.
And I think really, if you look at it, I think you eliminate a huge carbon footprint. Like, a lot of people are going to think about it, but if you're running humidifiers, fans, all these things for another month, and you can do a CryoCure in a day, and with little to no byproduct after it, or what we consider usable byproduct, you know what I mean? Another source of income. It's like Brandon says, it's kind of too good to be true, and I think that's what a lot of people are skeptical of it. Which, I guess if you think about it, we should be a little skeptical of a product like this, but when we see it working, when you talk about the science and technology behind it, there's no gimmick here, man. Like, this is really one of the most perfect machines that we've seen come into the cannabis industry as far as advancing it, right?
The most important thing is, start with the consumer and work your way back, sort of, right, from the consumer.
Yep.
And so, is this something that, as a consumer, not a store owner, not a producer, does the consumer like it? Does the consumer like it as much or more than the other products that are available? And in this case, the answer is yes. And then it goes back that, does the producer or processor like it? Yes, because it saves a lot of time and labor. So it's a win for everyone.
Yeah.
And it's a great machine. And, Tracee and Greg want to make sure that this is a truly quality product and people don't have problems with it, that it satisfies them. And
that's a long time. No, I appreciate it. Now, Ed, you have a new book out, right? Before you leave, pitch your new book for everybody so we know what to go look for, where we can find it.
Well, I have this book out. It's called Ask Ed Marijuana Success. And it goes into a number of gardens either that I was involved in. This was one that I was involved in right there.
That's one of our favorite pictures of you, by the way, Ed.
But anyway, this went back about, this just shows a flat thing, but it went back like 70, 80 feet. And it was 4 layers high.
That's an operation.
Yeah.
And Greg can do that in a day, guys. So just think about that. Greg's machine can do that in a day.
It was an acre in Oakland, California.
Right?
Wow. Yeah.
Oh,
outdoors.
Man. Well, Ed, again, we truly appreciate your time. It's truly an honor. You're a true legend. I'm Fathom. I get fan geeked out every time you've been on the show, to the point where I can barely function. And then I have Danny sitting here in front of me as well. And I know I haven't even heard a peep from the rest of the guys in the show today. I'm pretty sure they're pretty geeked out too. So keep doing what you're doing, Ed. Keep writing your books. We love everything that you guys preach. And thank you guys for standing behind this science and this product, because we've been trying to preach the same thing for the last year or so. Again, we've had a lot of, like you said, the people are very deflective with it. They're very, they don't want to believe the science. But I think the more they understand it, I think the trick is, like with everything in life, right? Get that bud into someone's hand, and they're going to go, wow, right? They're going to be blown away.
We've gotten great acceptance. Yeah. CryoCure has gotten great acceptance. People love it, and when producers see it and processors see it, they're really wowed. So we're all happy with it and how it's all going. Yeah.
Well, congratulations, guys, on that. We're gonna let Ed get going. He's got a few things he's got to do. But before we go, oh,
Yes.
no, I was gonna say before we're gonna let everybody take a break for a minute. We're gonna get our grow coach on, Thomas Morcombe of Vermont Grow Coach, and every week we do a little grow coaching segment with Thomas. We're gonna get him on. We're gonna let Ed go to his conference. Keep educating, Ed. We love you. We're going to come back and we'll wrap it up with Tracee and Dan, guys. So don't go anywhere. We have Timothy Fair coming as well from Vermont Cannabis Solutions. Great show. And again, a huge thank you to Ed Rosenthal, the guru of ganja.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure anytime.
All right, Ed, we'll talk soon. Thank you.
Okay.
Hey, this is Tom with Vermont Grow Coaching, and welcome to Grower's Guide, your weekly beginner-friendly cannabis tips and tricks. This week on Grower's Guide, we're going to be talking about bubble hash. Bubble hash is a fantastic way to use your leftover trim material, as well as popcorn bubs, and even plenty of your top colas if you so choose. But first, we're going to take a look at airline cloning. We touched base on airline cloning a couple of weeks ago, and now we're going to get back into it and let you see the final product. Alright, so there's your second look at airline cloning. Now we're going to move on to bubble hash. There are several different ways to make bubble hash, but today we're going to be making bubble hash in a personal washing machine. A personal portable washing machine shouldn't run you any more than about $100, and they're fairly easy to come by. After getting the washing machine, we get a couple of additional materials that we're going to need for the process. We get a zippered 220 micron filter bag, then we get a set of bags to go in a 5-gallon bucket. We use a 220 micron bag, a 73 micron bag, and a 25 micron bag. Now the 220 micron bag is used to catch any of the additional plant material that might have otherwise made it through the washing machine. The 73 micron bag catches your lower quality hash. We usually use that to turn into edibles. And then the 25 micron, that's going to catch the remainder of your hash. That's going to be your high quality hash, the stuff that if you choose to can be turned into full melt rosin as well. So we're going to start this process by taking several bags of fresh frozen material from the freezer and putting it into the bubble machine. Now the bubble machine is going to have about 2.5 to 3 gallons of water and probably about 5 to 10 pounds of ice, give or take, depending on how full the machine is. You usually want to go about half full of ice and then top off with water, but either way works. You can start with water and then add ice in. You just need to have enough water in there to keep the agitation going and to pull out all of the trichomes, but also have enough ice in there to maintain a cold temperature and help with the agitation process. Now that all of our fresh frozen material is inside our zipper bag and inside the washing machine, we're going to let the washing machine run for about 15 minutes. You can do this in a 5-gallon bucket instead of using this process, but we find that this is much easier to be able to walk away, come back to it a few minutes later, and not having done too much strenuous effort on your own part. So now that we've run for about 15 minutes, we're going to go ahead and drain the washing machine. We're going to drain directly into a 5-gallon bucket that has our micron filter bags already inside. As the material drains into the 5-gallon bucket, we're going to go ahead and stir it a little bit with a silicone spatula to help speed the process along. We're now going to take all of the material separately in their individual micron bags and press them inside a 25 micron screen. That's going to help get the rest of the moisture out so that we can then allow the material to dry. If you allow the hash to dry out in the open, you're going to expect roughly 24 to 36 hours dry time, depending on how thick you leave your hash patty. However, we like to use a freeze dryer for this process. It takes roughly about 24 hours and doesn't have any degradation. So instead of having a slightly brown hash as exposed to oxidation over the next 24 to 36 hours, we're going to end up with a almost pure white powder at the end of the process. Once your hash is dry, whether it be in a freeze dryer or more traditional method, you're now able to use the hash directly. You can use it to top bowls, you can use it to roll joints, or you can even use it as edibles. If you're going to use it in an edible, I strongly suggest that you do some decarbing prior to use. That way you obtain the most benefit possible from the hash. Now, with that said, Vermont Grow Coaching prefers to use our hash to make rosin. Thanks for tuning in to Grower's Guide. You should now have a general idea of how to make your own bubble hash. If you have any questions or concerns regarding today's segment, or would like to set up a consultation appointment, please reach out to us at vermontgrowcoach.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram, or contact us directly at 802-342-5381.
All right, guys, we're back, right?
Yep.
All right, we're back. Huge thank you to Thomas Morcombe from Vermont Grow Coaching for another great grow segment this week. Man, I saw a lot of ice going on. I saw a lot of things going on. So we're talking about processes. It's just another great process to look into. I just
want to throw in a little note to anyone that actually caught that video. The amount of bubble hash that you saw on the end of the process was not the final amount that came out of that process. That was actually only from about the first 10 or 15 seconds. I was in a quick bit of a hurry today, so when I process, the rest of the bucket remains waiting to be pressed at this time. So if you're looking to be processing bubble hash like that, you can expect to yield quite a bit more than that amount. So don't be afraid to give it a try just because of the yield you saw in the video.
No, it's a great process. Like we were talking earlier with Danny a little bit about processes and bubble hash and trichomes, and that whole process is kind of the opposite of what we were just talking about. Where the whole process is to knock off the trichomes, right?
Right, exactly.
To isolate them.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure Dan can talk to us more about that procedure, but when we talk about medication, that's typically one of the best ways to keep all your cannabinoids within your product, right?
Yeah, I mean, a great solventless extraction that really gets the essential oil and the gland heads in particular. There's nothing finer, to consume as a cannabis product. It's just pure essential oil. And it's very essential. You have receptors in your body that are just waiting to recept it. So feed the receptors.
I love how you're explaining this, Dan, because these are the things that we try to explain to people all the time. It's like, the difference between the medical high versus that THC targeted kick in the face kind of high on some of these products. You know what I mean?
It's a whole plant medicine. You got to really appreciate the combination of all of the essential oils and terpenoids, flavonoids.
It's awesome. It's awesome. All right, guys, we're going to switch gears another quick time right now to Timothy Fair, who's with us from Vermont Cannabis Solutions. This is always a fun time for the show for us because we get Tim fired up on what's going on in the news, laws, regulations, and what we can expect from these. We were just talking about the government is raiding dispensaries, right? And right now they're focusing on Maine. There's a couple of things going on all over the world, but we're just talking off air here a little bit about the situation in Maine. Can you enlighten us on what's going on in Maine for the people who aren't understanding why these dispensaries?
We don't know much yet. I mean, the initial reports out is that, in conjunction with the Maine State Police, the FBI has opened up a federal investigation into two separate companies. I forget the names of them. One is one of the largest cultivators in the state, which, sometimes being first is great, but being first also tends to put you under the spotlight a little bit. And so we still have to wait to see what comes out of this, but this is not unusual. Brandon mentioned, in California, once you have regulations, now you have people who are outside of those regulations. And if the prohibitionists, many of them reside in law enforcement, many of them reside in the Department of Justice, and they run the Department of Justice, as we know, it still doesn't like cannabis. So maybe they can't go after the people who are in perfect compliance. So here gives an excuse to perpetuate the ongoing war on drugs, the war on cannabis, the war on our population. And this is yet just another manifestation of it. Legalization doesn't end police action. They're going to find a way to continue to move forward. And if it means imposing a incredibly difficult to conform to regulatory scheme and then going after everybody who's not in that scheme, that's virtually what we've seen for the last 2 years in California to varying degrees. And it's not that, unfortunately, unusual. And until we get past this mindset of cannabis, marijuana, we can go back farther on the linguistics, as a dangerous substance, as a substance that needs to be regulated and controlled. Until we get past that, because that's a fallacy, then we're going to see this over and over and over again, no matter what jurisdiction it is. That's why we're here in Vermont. Granted, we don't have a tax and regulated system, but we did legalize in 2018. But yet I'm still defending cannabis cases on a regular basis, to varying degrees. But it's, different story, same day, different story. I don't know. It just, it can be very frustrating. And what happened in Maine in these busts and these raids, they're going to continue. And it's absurd. It's just nothing else to call it,
You're right. The reports have been very non-telling of what's going on. It's just they kind of tell you everybody came in.
Federal investigation. I'm surprised that as much leaked out that it even existed. Generally, with the feds, they keep things very tight-lipped. They can have an investigation going on for 16 months, 18 months, 24 months, and then they drop the hammer. That's why the federal, has a conviction rate of 98%.
Well, I mean, the article made it very clear, Tim, that they just wanted people to know they were there. Because they weren't giving information. It was just like, hey, guys, we want you to know we were in Maine. Thanks.
Yeah, which serves some purpose of the investigation. It's going to be really interesting to let that unfold. California got a very, very, very different situation than Maine. Again, we can talk about that, but this is going to be interesting. We've just kind of started branching into doing some consulting with some companies looking at licensing in Maine. So this today was kind of like, oh, wow. It'll be interesting to see what comes of this. And it's a shame that, a few years ago, 10 years ago, this was all at the state level. The feds really weren't bothering with low-level cannabis cases. And now that you're seeing states less and less, enthusiastic about prosecuting, you're getting the feds come in. It's what we had here in Burlington. We saw a federal prosecution for a couple of literally 7 undercover purchases of $40 worth of marijuana on a 16-month investigation. Not kilos, not coming over the border, and no, $7 bag. This is.
That's absolutely ridiculous.
That's not even an ounce. You're allowed to carry that and gift it in Vermont. It's not even an ounce, right?
I think it's interesting to note that alcohol prohibition really fell apart when the states stopped complying with federal rates. Yep. Once, and I think it was New York State was the first one, but once they decided, hey, we're just not going to cooperate, the feds basically backed off after that because they need local cooperation in order to do what they're doing. And without that, they can't do it. And I think, that's a great example to look at, when you're looking at how this all, ends or how it falls apart for the government.
Yeah, you make a great
point.
That's
exactly what we're hoping for, is that, these type of prosecutions are going to get less and less. In that case, again, 16 months investigation, multiple undercover officers, 7 undercover buys, this whole big long pile of discovery and evidence. One of the major players got 8 months and then probation. My client got fully probation. So when you see, juries don't want to convict people, and you've got this disconnect. You've got this disconnect between law enforcement, who still wants to go after this. They've spent their entire careers. They've been trained this is a dangerous drug. They've ruined hundreds, thousands of lives. The judges who have sentenced people to years in prison for a harmless substance. They don't want to give that up. They don't want to admit they were wrong. They don't want to admit that they destroyed lives for nothing. So they're going to go down tooth and nail fighting this, and you're going to see these cases being brought. But again, what you are seeing is that juries don't want to condemn. People, right. The people understand. The people in power are just not letting it go. And it's creating this horrible disconnect. And I pray Dan is right. I pray, Dan, that as we see the states just get over this and legalize and not put such an emphasis on it, that eventually the judiciary will change. I think a lot of it has to do with the current head, our Attorney General. Obviously, we've had anti-cannabis, anti-marijuana sentiment in the Department of Justice at the federal level since, Baughman. It really wasn't great. Eric Holder was okay, but we weren't, they weren't absolutely, rah-rah legalization. Then you had Jeff Sessions, who obviously we know how he felt about cannabis. Now, we have Bill Barr, who, was conducting, arguably illegal investigations into merger and acquisition activity last year in legal cannabis companies. We have not exactly had a cheerleading section. So if this changes in November, if we have a different president, after this election, hopefully whoever gets appointed Attorney General is not going to have that same animosity and from the top down. So if we can get the head different and we can get somebody in the Department of Justice who can prioritize and go after what needs to be, focused on, that in and of itself could have a huge impact on the individual U.S. attorneys. Also, a new president could appoint new U.S. attorneys. So you could get rid of some of these ones who are just still in this massively prohibition mindset and appoint more progressive, prosecutors like Sarah George here in Burlington, or I forget his name, but the district attorney in Philadelphia, who is just amazing in terms of the concept of what criminal justice should look like and what criminal justice should be, and what it shouldn't be. And what it shouldn't be is randomly harassing, young African American and Latinos claiming they smelt marijuana or because they have a joint in their pocket. That's not policing. That serves no purpose. Hopefully it'll change. Hopefully,
speaking of really amazing politicians, I had the pleasure to have a small conversation with Lieutenant Governor David Zuckerman today.
David. I love David.
I just happened to catch him on the street. I was very lucky. And I obviously promised my full endorsement and vote because he's an amazing individual. And he was nice enough to take one of my testing bottles.
David is an incredible human being, and if it wasn't for COVID, I think he would probably be our next governor.
I hope he is.
Timing is everything, and timing was horrible this time around.
Well, like you said, we need new heads in many different places.
We need
now, the last few weeks we've talked about the government a lot with the military, right? It seems like every week they're doing something uniquely awesome in the military lately for testing allowance and stuff like that. Well, Monday, for those of you who don't know, this is absolutely huge in my opinion. The House of Representatives approved an amendment to allow service members to use products containing hemp and its derivatives. So that could be a huge new thing for our government. Then that just shows a new step forward. Why? Again, we ask this question every week. Why is the military doing this and not the government? Is this the first step in it, or is it just... this is common sense.
Not the military doing it. It's the House of Representatives, which is the legislative branch, passing an amendment themselves who support cannabis, knowing it's not going anywhere in the Senate because nothing is anywhere in this absolute gridlock and our system of legislation is broken. We've talked about the military and their feelings on, cannabis. Should it be? Yes. Do a lot of people in the House of Representatives, which is democratically held, understand that the VA should be able to recommend medical cannabis? Absolutely. There is this sentiment and this groundswell within the legislative branch that this is a necessity, that this should be. And this is their way of showing their support. It is an amendment. It is in the House, which is not going to go. Not until we see things change. And we are in an election year. We're less than 100 days from election day. So we changed the makeup of Congress. We changed the current Senate majority. We changed the presidency. I guarantee you, we will see these bills start. I'll get more excited than you are, knowing that it actually has a chance of becoming law, that it actually has a chance of making it through the process. Because right now, it's window dressing. It's not, we're not going anywhere. But like I said, we can't even get the damn Safe Banking Act passed, and that's supported by just about everybody spanning the spectrum. Even the prohibitionists support the Safe Banking Act. Better to have the money traceable. We're really worried about money laundering in the cannabis industry, so let's keep it a cash-only business. It just is so ridiculous. But you can't even get that piece of legislation done. You can't get even a piece of legislation that merely says banks can continue to do what they're doing. It's not groundbreaking. It's not anything. We can't even get that done. So, I love to see the House taking up these cannabis issues. A few years back, they wouldn't even touch them. Now you're seeing these resolutions passed. You're seeing these amendments put on. So it is definitely a good sign. I'll be excited after November.
We're seeing a lot of states right now raise convictions. And California just did 9,000 people the other day. We just saw Kansas City is not going to no more charges on pot, possessions, anything like that. So they're not going to go after anybody. So no more fines. Not even a fine now. So that's a huge move forward. One thing I want to talk about, and this is like a little state that we never get to talk about in our government, is Hawaii, right? Hawaii is just passed a bill allowing edibles, right? When we talk about, it's the different states that are allowed to consume and not consume various things. Hawaii is one of these unique little pieces of us in the middle of the ocean, right? Are they really that far behind us, Tim and Dan, Tom? Like, how do you get? What do we say about Hawaii now? Because it's been discussed before, and no one really ever talks about it. But there's a lot of great things going on down there right now.
Yeah, I've actually been to Hawaii a few times, on the cannabis beat, and they do have medical marijuana. They are growing cannabis for medical marijuana. One interesting note is I had to do a full federal background check in order to visit the gardens. So I visited 2 different gardens, and I had to do full, fingerprinting at the post office, background check, fill out forms and everything, just in order to be present at the dispensary, just to set foot inside, and the actual grow that they had. So, they are, kind of far behind in a way, but I mean, I'm in New York State, so they're further along than we are. They have flower for sale, they have concentrates, and now they have edibles. And, I think they're now changing to a reciprocal state so that if you apply in advance and you're a medical patient in another state visiting Hawaii, you can be a patient in Hawaii as well.
Yep.
Ultimately, I think, obviously they need adult use to be legal. And I think, the tourist industry there would benefit from it. And Hawaiian cannabis is legendary, the Hawaiian sativas of yore. So, from my experience, they do have dispensaries. The prices are pretty high. It's very heavily regulated. They're not allowed to use pesticides or beneficial insects because you can't introduce different species down there. So it's very strict and very highly regulated, and a tough playing field for anyone who wants to be in the medical cannabis world, and the business and the industry of it there. That's my impression of it. They have a wonderful event called the Hawaii Cannabis Expo. One of the last events I attended, actually, I think it was February. And that's just a wonderful, amazing event where everybody gets together, but still very strict. No seed sales allowed this year, which, discouraged a lot of vendors from participating. But a thriving industry and a thriving community and a long history of, cannabis growing, even with all the helicopters and all that.
Let me ask you a question, Dan. Why do you think all these, you've seen it in a trend in the last year of all these organizations and events and things not allowing seeds where they allowed them before? Why, is that a new trend? Why would they exclude that part of the industry? Because like you said, it's a huge part, and a lot of people just go for that aspect.
Yeah, I mean, I think as the regulations get tighter, it becomes more difficult. There's a wider gray area when there's not a lot of regulation, and then once those regulations come in, we saw this with High Times with the cannabis cups as well. Doing gatherings where people would consume cannabis. There was a long time between, let's say 2010 and maybe 2016 or so, where there was just really no laws on the books about it, and we were able to sort of get away with it because, there wasn't laws about large gatherings and consumption. Once those laws were put in place, even in places like Colorado and California, it became much more difficult for us to have, these gatherings that were implicitly, cannabis consumption events. And, then the vendors were also more highly scrutinized, so that if you were selling seeds or if you were selling, flowers or concentrates right out of your booth, that's not in compliance with these new regulations. And so, you see 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and you see these regulations that are able to, impose upon our industry and slow it down in ways that we didn't anticipate when we thought, hey, things are getting legal.
I mean, we all were rooting so far for decriminalization. No one thinks about the consequences. Like, with decriminalization is going to come regulations, right? And regulations are going to be set by wherever you are. We understand that. They're going to be set hard because this is not an industry that I don't think people want to see succeed on a political or a corporate level, obviously, because it's a threatened industry, right? Because within the industry, it's more than just flower, edibles, vapes, and curing, right? I mean, we talk about the medical industry, we talk about STEM, we talk about even just the garment industry, or the byproduct from hemp, where we can make textiles and toilet paper, and we literally change markets. What's interesting is when we're talking about the prohibition side of it, and I don't know if you guys caught this or know that John Dvorak, he came on and really educated us a lot about things. So one of the biggest questions is can we get the hemp industry back and survivable in America where it's profitable? And that's one of, I think, our biggest questions here. Tim, we kind of joked about it before about the cocaine being legalized in Colombia right now, because Colombia seems to they're really trying to put their name on the map, right, with the medical side and pushing research right now.
Honestly, I think it's more than trying to put their name on the map. I think they're trying to address the underlying rot that's been in their country because of the illegal drug trade for the last 30 years. Fighting it, deforesting their entire nation with toxic chemicals, ruining their economy, just killing their people. All of these things haven't worked real well. So maybe, just maybe, this might be an answer. And I think it's that more so than putting their, trying to be famous, trying to be number one. I really think they're trying to address these really serious, systemic issues within their own nation. And
but does this make sense then, though?
I don't know how it's going to play out, but I will tell you, look at prohibition, any prohibition. When you legalize, the crime drops because the economic incentive to continue in that industry is gone. Cocaine does not cost a lot of money to make. None of drugs do. They're cheap. They're very, very cheap. Their value comes from the fact that they're illegal, that there's prohibition. That's in where the money comes from. So when you take that away, you're not going to have that same level of criminal activity. You're not going to have that same economic incentive. This is why when you legalize cannabis, you don't see a lot of, once things are going well, once it's well regulated and not taxed to all hell, once you have home grow, you see the black market disappear. I always say this, how many people you see selling black market booze these days? How much bathtub gin bottles are going around? There's a reason for that. It doesn't happen overnight. Everyone's like, oh, we legalized yesterday and there's still a black market. Of course. California, we have a 60% tax rate. We still have a black market, right? But ultimately, when you have a rational, sane, and common sense regulatory model on these things, the black market will go away because there will be no economic incentive to do so. Because people will not want to get a bag of crap that they don't know if it has pesticides or heavy metals or it's contaminated or, no. They want to be able to trust, just like when you go into a liquor store. There's not a bunch of bottles with brown liquid in them going, I don't know what it is, good luck. No, people want to know what they're getting. They want to know their strength. It's not, and everyone doesn't want the 32% THC. There are some people who want smaller levels of, THC. There's some people who want the one-to-one splits. There's some people who understand that cannabinoids work in conjunction with one another. Right. There's all sorts of consumers out there, and those consumers want the choice they're used to, and that's what a regulated system gives them to. And in Colombia, by legalizing, there's also a lot of different variables, a lot of different factors we need to talk about. I mean, if you legalize but have a corrupt, government, that's not going to really help things either. But that option, I'm telling you, probably has a lot higher likelihood of success than what they've done for the last 30 years. Right. Which has really done nothing but destroy their country, destroy their economy, destroy their infrastructure. which is horrible because I've never been to Colombia, but from what I've heard, it's absolutely beautiful nation.
A beautiful, beautiful place that would thrive highly from ecotourism and all of that. And I think it's interesting, the first rule of economics is that demand creates supply, and it's our countries, the North American countries, the European countries' insatiable demand that for those drugs that has destroyed Colombia, Bolivia, Mexico, really wreaked havoc upon them, and we can't blame them for supplying us with something we demand. The blame is on us for the demand, and the blame is on prohibition for making it so risky and so profitable that people are willing to die over it. And I challenge people to look at cigarettes. Make cigarettes, make tobacco illegal tomorrow in the United States, and you will have a thriving underground marketplace, people killing each other over, truckloads of cigarettes, and a whole wave of crime that would be related to nicotine at that point, only because of the prohibition of it. So it doesn't even matter what the product is. Someone demands it, there's going to be a supply. People want Cuban cigars, they're going to find a way to get Cuban cigars. People want whatever it is, they're going to get it. And it doesn't matter how much blood is on it. It doesn't matter how much it costs. It doesn't matter if you have the death penalty for possession of it in some countries like Indonesia, where you can be killed for possession of cannabis. People still have cannabis in prisons where, everything that goes in and out is allegedly, highly regulated. There's still cannabis in a thriving drug marketplace in jail. So this isn't something you can control. We don't all want to live in jail.
Right. And Dan, you bring up an excellent point. I love the fact that you use cigarettes too, because you know what? The one drug that our society has managed to get a lot of people off of? Cigarettes. Think about how many people smoked in the 60s. Everywhere, in planes, all over. We as a society have gotten past that. The rates of adult smokers and who are addicted to nicotine have plummeted over the last 40 years. And how did we do it? Did we do it by making it illegal and throwing flashbangs and shooting dogs and going in and storming and arresting people? No. We educated the public as to what these things actually do to you. And when people start to realize that through an education campaign, they go, you know what? That's a really addictive thing. I really don't want to have COPD. I don't want lung cancer. I don't want to have to breathe through a tube for the rest of my life. And by education, we were able to lower our society's use of nicotine, tobacco. It's a great example. Everything else skyrocketed, I think that it's a great example.
You guys make a great point, and the one thing we always talk about is cost, right? And if we can get these, like you said, we can take that black market away, the cost should come down, right? In the ideal world, because
the price, the idea of a $300 ounce of cannabis is outrageous. All of the cost is in the risk. The grower, the middleman, the many middlemen or middle people that goes through before it gets to the consumer, each one of them is taking a huge risk. And so the cost of producing it is pennies to the dollar, of any of that. And, really along the same lines as any other fruit or vegetable,
right,
as far as production cost goes.
Yeah,
exactly. And that's,
It was Kendall, right, that said yesterday, he goes, my ounce per pound of cannabis to produce is $60.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
And again, it's not that people shouldn't be allowed to make money, but when the money is all in the risk, then that's where you run into the problems. And everyone who says legalization, overregulation, yeah, it's great, but we're trying to keep people out of jail. We're trying to keep people from having this on their records and things like that. So the costs of legalization are lower than they used to be as far as what people paid as far as risk, but the prices are still up there and just as high. And I think a lot of that has to do with indoor cultivation and HVAC systems and expensive high costs of getting to market and getting putting together a business. And
I think the dispensaries, when the dispensaries
for adult use.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, at least I know I hear the dispensaries kind of set the market, because if the dispensary is selling a $400 ounce, I know I can sell mine at like $350 that I probably used to sell at $250, because it's that market game, it's that salesman game that you can use to your advantage, right? But anyways, guys, we're getting close to wrapping up this show. This has been another great conversation. I got to thank Timothy Fair.
Danny, thank you so much again. It's so much fun chatting with you, brother. Like, thank you. Thank you.
No, this is great conversation.
So
Danny, we got to get you back on the show, man. A little straight one-on-one, and really pick your brain a lot. Tracee, Greg, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. This is huge, man. We've seen the CryoCure. We've talked to Rick Naya a lot. We see the support it has with Dan and Ed endorsing and standing behind the product, which is ultimately huge. And with those three guys, I really can't understand why people still think this is a gimmick. But again, it almost is too good to be true. But guys, if you can find one of these machines, if you can find a product that is made by one of these machines, you will be a believer. I was the same way until we smoked it, but I understand the science behind it. We talk science all day long, you know what I mean? It's kind of like, Dan, Ed, and Tracee and Greg, we're always thinking about ways to get cannabinoids to patients in the best and most accurate ways, right? And a lot of these distillation or extraction processes take out too much for me to call medical. Like, it's great if you want to get high. That's different for me, you know what I mean? But when we're talking about patients and really trying to create something new that's really going to be valuable to the industry, I think what you guys came up with is amazing. It's going to be cool to educate a whole nother segment of an industry that people need to get educated on, because, again, like you guys said, nobody was doing it. You know what I mean? Ed would throw weed in the freezer for shits and giggles. You know what I mean? Like, who does that? I know people that freeze weed, but then again, as a chef, I'm a minded chef to know that what freezing fruits and vegetables and green products can do to that product when you pull it out. And then, like you said, you can pull it out, it holds moisture, you get freezer burn, you can have some issues with it, but the product is really great. I can't wait to see what you guys come up with as far as the new units coming out. I know you guys are in testing, but again, tell everybody, Tracee, Greg, where they can find you, how they can reach out to you with any questions and concerns, and where they can find out some more information on the technology that you guys are providing.
Yeah, you can check out the website, www.cryocure.com, and you can also see some of the more update that we do with the beta machine on Instagram, which is at CryoCure Cannabis. So
follow us on Instagram for sure. Greg always posts some really great things in real time, and
you can get an idea what the trichomes look like. When we were talking about the trichome preservation, you could see a lot of that on the Instagram, where you'd think it's just a wet cannabis trichome, and it's actually dried through our process. All of the photos that you see that are up close shots. So,
like I said, you guys do a great job. We're excited to have you in our industry. We definitely need an answer to these questions. Like I tell everybody all the time, I rave for fresh press flower. I rave for the bubble hash, and now I rave for the CryoCure, because to me, it's all keeping the whole plant there.
It's the best quality product you can get.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
we appreciate you.
It means so much.
Hey, no problem.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks very much thanks for your presence today, Danny. Thank you.
And Danny, thank you.
My pleasure.
You have a lot to talk about too, Danny. We'll let you sign off. Tell everybody who you are, where they can find you, and the Northeast, man, Northeast Leaf Magazine. We're so excited to see the first copy of it.
Yeah, absolutely. The first issue will be out in September. It's a monthly magazine. It's free to the public. Check us out at Instagram is at Northeast Leaf Mag. Website is neleafmag.com. We're on all the social media. Like I said, we're out in September, so we have a very short time to put that together, and then we're monthly after that. Very excited. The podcast is Grow Bud Yourself on anywhere that you listen to podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, and everywhere else. And, the book, people are digging the book lately, especially I think a lot of people are starting to grow their own. The book is Cannabis, A Beginner's Guide to Growing Marijuana on Amazon and in cooler bookstores. And shout out to you guys in Vermont. Big things are coming for us in the Northeast, and I'm excited to be a part of it. And back to my roots, in the region, spreading the word about this wonderful healing flower and all the different ways to produce it, consume it, and make it, reach our receptors in our bodies that are there made for recepting.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, truly unique how we do respond to the plant. Guys, again, thank you for coming on. Huge thank you. Next week, guys, I just want to give a little plug out. We're going to have the Canna Collective Incorporated Danica Dunseathon. We've had her on the show before, but we're going to talk a lot about what's going on in Canada now since COVID. I mean, we didn't even touch base on COVID today.
No.
And unfortunately, with the COVID going on, a lot of the events are getting canceled, guys. We wish we could be out there supporting everybody in the industry more. Danny, I can't wait to hopefully get you up here in Vermont soon. We'll take care of you when you get up here. But we'll see everybody around the scenes shortly. Keep doing what you're doing. Tracee, Greg, thank you guys. We'll see you next week again on In the Weeds. Awesome show today, guys. Thank you, Ed.
Thanks, buddy.
Take care.
We'll talk to you guys soon.